Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Be a Great Player. In today's episode I'm answering a question that was left for us on the website www.greatgamemaster.com, and the question was, how do you play a lycanthrope in your game? So as a player, when your character becomes infected with something, whether it's lycanthropy, vampirism, undeath, plague, well, maybe not so much plague, but when your character becomes infected with something that causes a transformation to occur, just how do you roleplay that? And then how do you play it so that it fits in with the group without becoming annoying? That's what we're going to be looking into in this video. So let's take the example of a lycanthrope. The very first thing that I think that's important to do as a player, the moment you become infected with this thing, or even if you're starting it off at the beginning of the game, is to identify exactly what happens when you transform. And this is a conversation that you need to have with the game master in charge. If she thinks that lycanthropes, once they've transformed into these big hairy beasts, when they transform back into their own selves, they return with all their clothes and equipment on, that's one thing. If she, however, is a Pratchett fan, the moment the werewolf transforms back into shape, all the clothes, all the equipment is left wherever they happen to be. So the idea is to understand fully what happens when you transform. Do you leave all your clothes behind? Do your clothes rip open if you're becoming more like a Hulk-like creature, in which case all your precious armor is ripped asunder as you grow in stature and in scale? That's part of understanding it. The other part is, what are your actual changes to your character? Do they become stronger? Do they become stupid? Do they become better at tracking things by scent? Do they have higher senses of hearing? Do their combat abilities change? Do their hit points change? All of the mechanical stuff you're going to need to embrace as well, because that's going to determine a lot of things on how you roleplay the creature. And of course, another thing that's very important to understand before you even start moving forward is, do you have control over the character, and does the character retain any kind of humanity once it's transformed? In a lot of instances, werewolves, once they transform into whatever, from whatever they were into this werewolf thing, lose all kind of control and can run around and savage even their closest friends. It is only the beauty who might be able to soothe that beast and maybe avoid being eaten. Generally speaking, the GM will determine if you are a lycanthrope, you have no control over your actions and you become a GM-controlled character temporarily until you revert back to your state. If you are a vampire, well, maybe you maintain your memories once you've transformed into bats, or perhaps the question there is, can you resist the urge to go and suck on the blood of the young innocent woman? That's something that you need to determine as well. So once you've got a grasp on just what is happening to your character, who controls your character once you have transformed, and what they remember after the transformation, only then can you actually start to look at how to play one of these changed creatures. Now that does sound strange, doesn't it? You now know all of the stats, you know all of the changes, surely it's obvious. Well, actually it isn't. Because, and this is where we start to tread onto some dangerous ground, and it's a video that will be coming up a little bit later in the months. I'm still busy planning it, and it's where we start looking at metagaming. And this is a good example of how we can use metagaming to our advantage. Let's say for the example, the GM, she's decided that lycanthropes maintain a certain amount of their core humanity, but once they've transformed, if there is blood in the air, if there is blood presented to them, if there is a carcass, if there's a creature running away in fear and they can smell that fear, they have to make some kind of mental check, whether it's a wisdom saving throw or some kind of sanity check, whatever the system uses. They then need to make this roll, otherwise if they see that trigger, they will go feral and consume it, eat it, chase it, bite it, do whatever the transformated creature would normally do. So knowing knowing that your character knows, and this really only applies if your character knows that they transform into a werewolf. And generally speaking, most literature, it's not something that's unknown, because part of being a transforming figure is having the angst and the fear and the trepidation of knowing that you could transform at any moment, whether it's through anger or through a full moon or the sight of blood or a code word or a period of the month. Knowing that that's coming up, knowing or anticipating that that could happen, is part of the psyche of a transforming creature. And it's something that you need to bring into your character. Now, this is where we start to get interesting. You need to take the idea that your character is becoming this creature, and you need to understand in your own mind what your character feels about that. Does your character relish the opportunity of becoming an immortal vampire? And yes, you have to eat a few people every now and again, but perhaps that is not so bad in order to live forever. Perhaps your character fears transforming into the Hulk or this monstrous creature, this Mr. Hyde. Maybe your character doesn't want to become that, and so they fear it. Perhaps they are uncertain as to how they feel about it. Maybe there's a small part of them that enjoys running with the pack through a forest with the full moon and hunting down deer and, well, occasional human. Maybe they secretly enjoy it, but outwardly are repulsed by their own enjoyment of it. It's that kind of thinking that you need to bring to your transforming character. If they are repulsed by it, if they're afraid of what they turn into, if they fear what they're turning into, you need to bring that in. And you need to decide how your character is going to try and hide it from the rest of the world. If your character relishes it, but knows that they lose control, again, you need to decide what is your character going to be doing to maybe mitigate the chance of you losing control whilst maximizing the chance of you transforming into the creature that you're going to transform into. And that's a conversation you need to have in your own head. Is it more entertaining if around the 25th of every month my character needs to go into seclusion and tells the rest of the party it's a religious thing? You may not come with me. I must do this. It is only for a 12-hour period. We can pause here on our epic quest. It won't sacrifice too much of our time, but I must do this. Are they going to plead? Are they going to be aloof about it and say, I must leave. I will not tell you why. I will not tell you where, but I will see you at sunrise. It's up to you. And it depends. If it's mysterious, the other players are going to go, why is he disappearing? Sure, they know that you're a lycanthrope because they're going to hear whatever it is the GM describes for you, but their characters won't. Their characters might be suspicious. Maybe their characters follow. In which case, what's your character going to do if you discover that you're being followed? And that leads to the next question, is understanding how the rest of the world perceives your affliction. Perhaps werewolves are considered everyday ordinary creatures and it's not looked down upon in any way. Perhaps transforming into a giant rage-filled man is not a bad thing. Maybe it's the worst thing. Perhaps your kind are immediately executed by burning or disembowelment or being drawn and quartered. Understanding that will help to motivate your character's response to themselves turning. It will also help to motivate your character and you as the player to decide how your character is going to respond to these transformations happening, and then how you can make it so that you don't interrupt the flow of the party. But now what happens if you're in the middle of a dungeon, you're on board that starship, and there is no way for you to go into seclusion to hide your transformation from your fellow characters? How do you handle that? Again, it depends on the consequences of what happens once you change. If you look at the Avengers movie, Hulk warns people, get away, leave me alone. And then he rushes off and destroys things. Maybe that's what your character needs to do. On the other hand, maybe your character remains secretive about it and tries to find an avenue to escape into a small passageway so they can lock themselves away to protect the group that they're traveling with. So it's about looking at it from that perspective, and it's about looking at it as an affliction. If you're seeing it as an advantage, then of course your character might not be so cagey about it. Is your character going to take in the confidence of the fellow players, the fellow party members? Are they going to say, listen, this is what happens. This is what happens. We have to be aware that when I leave, I'm leaving for a reason. Then you need to look, once you've worked out all this complicated interrelationship sort of dynamics, you then need to work out whether your character wants to embrace the change or whether your character wants to fight against it. And then you need to decide if they're going to fight against it, what do they need to do? And how urgently are they pushing that agenda? Is it an all-consuming desire to get away from the enemy and to just to get away from the enemy, listen to me, to get away from this internal enemy, from this monster that sits upon their back, in which case it's their all-consuming passion, and they will interrogate alchemists, they will interrogate databanks, they will try and find any way possible to cure themselves of this, even perhaps at the risk of their own companions. Are they that kind of consumed? Are they more curious about their affliction and they want to know more? Not so that they can necessarily become better, but so that they can control it and ignore it. Are they Vulcan in their approach, that these emotions which transform us into these evil beings, we can purge them by ignoring them and suppressing them? Is maybe that what your character is trying to do? Or if your character's embraced it, is your character looking for others who maybe are similar and who have learned how to use their powers in a greater way, in a better kind of way? That's how I think one should take on playing a lycanthrope, is looking at it from all those different angles, seeing how you can use it so that it doesn't stop the group. The last thing that you want is for your character to become the focus of the group stories simply because your character turns into a werewolf and pees on every corner they come across. Not only is that embarrassing, but it kind of becomes repetitive after a while. You need to figure out how to grow your character, how to make that transformation become a narrative, a journey. And that means working with your GM. Talk to her and say, listen, please, I feel as if we're becoming stuck in this routine of every time there's a stressful situation, my character passes out or my character turns into a tree stump. We need to figure out a developmental growth or some kind of angle because I'm worried that it's becoming routine. Your GM should embrace that and should look for ways to help you change or develop. And if they're not, then there's nothing wrong with you going to your fellow players' characters and saying, gentlemen, this is the problem. I need to find a cure because it's not working for us and I need your help. There's nothing more powerful than characters asking for personal help on a matter that must be deeply, deeply personal. So you can use that to create this amazing story. Anyway, I hope that answered your question. Hit that like button if you liked what I said. Hit that subscribe button if you want me to say more. And of course, head on over to www.greatgamemaster.com where you can leave your requests for videos so that I can work through it and eventually get to yours. Or, of course, you can join us on Patreon. Otherwise, if not, I wish you and your fellow players the very happiest of playing.